Sometimes the person sitting in the empty seat beside you is the one who changes your entire life. The soft hum of conversation drifted through the grand ballroom of the Lakeside Manor in Vermont, blending with the gentle clink of champagne glasses and silverware against porcelain plates. Warm golden lights shimmered from crystal chandeliers overhead, casting a glow across the room where every table looked like it belonged on the cover of a wedding magazine. White roses filled elegant centerpieces, string lights sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, and laughter echoed from every corner of the reception hall. But Olivia Bennet felt completely invisible. Standing near the entrance, she adjusted the sleeve of her navy blue dress and forced herself to smile. She had promised her cousin Rachel she would come. That was the only reason she was here. 2 weeks ago, her boyfriend of 3 years had ended their relationship with a text message. 3 years reduced to a few sentences and a hollow apology. Since then, every wedding photo, every happy couple, every romantic song on the radio felt like a reminder of what she no longer had. She glanced around the room. Everywhere she looked, people belonged somewhere. Couples held hands. Friends gathered in circles. Families filled entire tables with stories and laughter. Olivia knew almost no one. Rachel had been her closest connection to this wedding, and tonight Rachel was busy being the bride. A wedding coordinator hurried past carrying a clipboard. A photographer called for another group picture. The celebration moved forward without noticing the woman standing quietly near the back wall. Taking a slow breath, Olivia reached into her purse and pulled out her seating card. Table 12. She followed the handwritten sign across the ballroom until she found her assigned table tucked near the dance floor. 8 chairs surrounded it. 7 were already occupied. She offered polite smiles as she approached, but nobody seemed particularly interested in conversation. Most were relatives of the groom. A few were old college friends catching up after years apart. Olivia slipped into the only empty chair and folded her hands in her lap. Maybe she could survive the evening unnoticed. The band began playing a soft jazz melody while servers carried trays between tables. Olivia sipped her water and watched the newlyweds greet guests. She was genuinely happy for Rachel. She just wished happiness didn't feel so distant tonight. Then she noticed something. The chair beside her was still empty. Every other seat in the ballroom appeared occupied, yet the place sitting next to hers remained untouched. An elegant name card rested against the plate, but someone had accidentally placed a folded napkin over it. She looked away, assuming whoever belonged there was running late. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The speeches began. The empty chair remained empty. Olivia found herself staring at it again. Funny how one empty seat could feel like a mirror. She looked down at her untouched dinner and smiled sadly to herself. Looks like we both got stood up tonight. The voice came from behind her. Deep, warm, unexpected. Olivia turned. A tall man with dark hair stood beside the chair, loosening his tie slightly as though he had just arrived from somewhere else entirely. There was an easy confidence about him, but nothing arrogant. His blue eyes settled on the empty seat before shifting toward her. Then he smiled. Mind if I join the Lonely Table Club? For the first time all evening, Olivia laughed. Olivia felt heat rush to her cheeks as she laughed, surprised by how easily the stranger had broken through the awkward shell she had been carrying all evening. I think membership is automatic once you spend 20 minutes talking to your water glass, she replied. The man pulled out the chair and sat beside her, smiling as though they were already sharing an inside joke. Then I definitely qualify, he said. I am Ethan. Olivia. Nice to meet you, Olivia. For a moment, neither spoke. The speeches continued from the front of the room, while applause drifted across the ballroom. Yet somehow the silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. Ethan glanced toward the dance floor where couples swayed beneath the warm lights. Bride or groom, he asked. Bride. Rachel is my cousin. Well, second cousin technically. Groom, Ethan replied. I have known Ryan since college. Olivia nodded. Then you probably know half the people here. Ethan looked around dramatically. That is the problem. I know too many of them. She laughed again. There was something refreshing about him. He did not seem interested in impressing anyone. He was not constantly checking his phone or scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. He was simply present. As dinner was served, their conversation flowed naturally from one topic to another. They talked about small towns and favorite restaurants, terrible first jobs, childhood dreams, and the strange pressure of attending weddings when you were single. Olivia found herself sharing things she normally kept private. I teach third grade, she said. That means every day I answer questions like why the moon follows our car and whether dogs understand taxes. Ethan nearly choked on his drink laughing. And do they? The moon definitely does. The dogs are still under investigation. His laughter was genuine and warm. It made Olivia forget, if only briefly, how lonely she had felt when she arrived. Across the room, the band transitioned into a slower melody. The golden lights reflected in the windows overlooking the lake, creating the illusion that stars surrounded the ballroom. Olivia noticed Ethan listening carefully whenever she spoke. Most people waited for their turn to talk. Ethan seemed to actually hear her. What about you? She asked. What do you do? For the first time, he hesitated. Not long enough to seem suspicious. Just long enough to seem thoughtful. Business, he said. That is wonderfully vague. I have been told that before. What kind of business? The kind with too many meetings. Olivia grinned. You hate meetings. Passionately. Then we have something in common. I hate faculty meetings. Maybe we should start a support group. She shook her head, smiling into her glass. Somewhere during the conversation, she stopped feeling like the forgotten guest at table 12. The room had not changed. The music was the same. The guests were the same. But the evening felt different now. Lighter. Easier. A few minutes later, one of the bridesmaids approached carrying a stack of seating cards. This is strange, she murmured, looking confused. I could have sworn someone switched place cards earlier. Olivia barely paid attention until the bridesmaid picked up a card from the center of the table and frowned. Wait, this seat was not supposed to be here. Ethan exchanged a glance with Olivia. The bridesmaid laughed softly and walked away, still studying the cards. Neither of them knew it yet, but the small mystery would matter far more than either imagined. For now, Olivia simply looked at Ethan and smiled. For the first time in weeks, she was genuinely glad she had decided to come. The rest of the evening passed far too quickly for Olivia. Every time she thought the conversation had reached its natural end, another subject appeared. They debated the best road trip snacks, compared embarrassing high school memories, and discovered they both preferred small bookstores over crowded shopping malls. By the time dessert arrived, it felt less like talking to a stranger and more like reconnecting with someone she had somehow known for years. When the newlyweds took the dance floor for their first dance, the entire ballroom seemed to soften. Conversations quieted. Guests turned toward the glowing lights at the center of the room. Olivia watched Rachel smile at her new husband and felt a bittersweet ache in her chest. Once, she had imagined a future like that for herself. Ethan seemed to notice the change in her expression. You okay? He asked gently. Olivia hesitated before answering. Honestly. She stared at the dance floor. I thought I would be married by now. The words surprised even her. She had not planned to say them out loud. Ethan did not laugh or offer one of those empty reassurances people usually gave. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. I used to think I would have my entire life figured out by 30. And turns out life did not receive the memo. Olivia smiled. That makes two of us. For a moment, neither spoke. The music drifted through the ballroom while guests watched the happy couple. You know, Ethan finally said, there is a strange amount of pressure around timelines. Olivia looked at him. What do you mean? People act like there is some invisible checklist. Career by this age. House by that age. Marriage by another. As if life is a race. And if you fall behind, everyone notices. Exactly. She laughed softly. That might be the most comforting thing anyone has said to me all month. Ethan raised his glass. Happy to be of service. As the evening continued, more guests migrated toward the dance floor. Some danced gracefully. Others danced with complete confidence despite having absolutely no rhythm. Olivia found herself laughing harder than she had in weeks. At one point, a little girl no older than 8 ran past their table carrying a flower basket. She stopped suddenly and pointed at Ethan. You are supposed to be dancing. Ethan looked behind himself. Me? Yes. Everyone is supposed to dance at weddings. Olivia covered her mouth to hide a grin. The little girl crossed her arms. That is the rule. Ethan glanced at Olivia. Well, apparently we have been given instructions. Apparently. Before she could overthink it, Ethan stood and offered his hand. Would you like to avoid breaking wedding law with me? Olivia looked at his outstretched hand. Just hours ago she had nearly stayed home. Now she was smiling at a man she had met less than 2 hours earlier. Life was strange. All right, she said. But I should warn you, my dancing skills are extremely average. Perfect. Mine are below average. Together they stepped onto the dance floor. The band played an upbeat classic that had guests clapping along. Olivia felt nervous for exactly 10 seconds. Then Ethan attempted a dramatic spin, nearly lost his balance, and laughed at himself so openly that her remaining anxiety disappeared. They danced, joked, and laughed among dozens of strangers until her cheeks hurt from smiling. Somewhere across the room, unnoticed by either of them, the groom glanced toward their table and then toward the dance floor. A knowing smile crossed his face, because Ryan remembered exactly where Olivia had originally been assigned to sit, and he knew that seat had never been beside Ethan. By the time the evening reached its final hour, the reception felt transformed. What had started as a night Olivia expected to endure had somehow become a night she wished would last a little longer. The dance floor remained crowded. The band played one final set, and guests lingered as though nobody wanted the celebration to end. Ethan and Olivia eventually returned to their table, both slightly out of breath from dancing. I think that little girl was right, Ethan said as he reached for his water glass. About what? Everyone should dance at weddings. Olivia smiled. Even people with below-average skills? Especially those people. Their laughter blended naturally with the noise around them. For the first time in weeks, Olivia was not thinking about her breakup. She was not replaying old conversations or wondering what she could have done differently. She was simply enjoying the present moment. Across the ballroom, dark clouds had begun gathering outside the tall windows overlooking the lake. A low rumble echoed in the distance. Several guests glanced outside, noticing the approaching storm. Looks like rain, Olivia said. Ethan followed her gaze. A lot of it. Within minutes, flashes of lightning illuminated the horizon. The weather forecast had promised a clear evening, but New England weather often had other plans. The wind picked up. Tree branches swayed beyond the glass. Then, without warning, the ballroom lights flickered. Once, twice. A collective murmur spread through the crowd. The band stopped playing. The chandeliers blinked again, and suddenly the room went dark. A few surprised gasps filled the ballroom before emergency lighting softly activated along the walls. The golden glow disappeared, replaced by dim backup lights that cast long shadows across the room. For a second, confusion rippled through the guests. Servers paused. Conversations stopped. Several older relatives looked concerned. Near the front of the room, Rachel appeared worried as she spoke with the venue manager. Looks like the storm won, Olivia said quietly. Ethan was already standing. Come on. Where are we going? To help. Before she could answer, he was moving toward the front of the room. Olivia followed instinctively. The venue staff scrambled to coordinate generators while guests pulled out phone flashlights. Rachel looked overwhelmed. Her carefully planned wedding was suddenly facing an unexpected problem. What can we do? Olivia asked. Rachel looked relieved to see a familiar face. Honestly, anything. People are getting nervous, and we are still waiting for the backup system. Ethan immediately stepped into action. Calmly, naturally. He spoke with staff members, organized volunteers, and helped relocate guests toward the center of the ballroom, where emergency lighting was strongest. There was no hesitation in him. No need for instructions. He simply saw a problem and began solving it. Olivia noticed how quickly people listened when he spoke. Not because he was loud, because he carried a quiet confidence that made others trust him. Together, they spent nearly half an hour helping wherever needed. Olivia reassured nervous relatives while Ethan coordinated logistics with the venue manager. Eventually, the generators activated and warm light slowly returned to the room. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom. Rachel laughed with visible relief. The celebration could continue. As guests returned to their tables, Rachel hugged Olivia tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Then she glanced toward Ethan. And thank your friend too. Olivia looked across the room. Ethan was helping an elderly guest back to her seat, completely unaware anyone was watching him. For reasons she could not fully explain, her heart softened. Because beneath the easy humor and casual conversation, she was beginning to see something else. Character. The kind that revealed itself only when things stopped going according to plan. The storm gradually moved past the lake, leaving behind a steady rain that tapped softly against the ballroom windows. Inside, the reception recovered its energy. Music returned. Conversations resumed. Guests laughed as though the interruption had become part of the evening's charm. Yet for Olivia, something had shifted. She found herself noticing Ethan more closely now. Not his appearance, not his smile, the way he treated people, the way he listened, the way he stepped forward when help was needed and disappeared into the background once the problem was solved. It felt rare. Near midnight, many guests had begun gathering their coats. The dance floor slowly thinned. Olivia was helping Rachel pack a few personal items when she overheard two bridesmaids talking near the gift table. "I still do not understand how the seating cards got mixed up," one said. "I checked them 3 times yesterday. Maybe someone moved them accidentally." "No. Table 12 definitely changed. At least 2 names were different." Olivia paused. The conversation caught her attention immediately. "What do you mean?" she asked. The bridesmaid looked surprised. "Oh, it is nothing serious. Just strange. Some of the seating cards were not where they were supposed to be." "Including mine?" Olivia asked. "Actually, yes." The bridesmaid laughed lightly. "You were originally assigned to table 4. Olivia blinked. "Table 4. That was the plan when we finalized everything." Before Olivia could ask another question, Rachel appeared carrying a box of wedding favors. "What are you 3 talking about?" "The seating cards," one bridesmaid replied. Rachel stopped for half a second. A very small pause. Barely noticeable. "Oh, that," she said casually. "Probably just wedding chaos." But something about her expression seemed amused. Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Rachel, what? You know something?" Rachel laughed and shook her head. "Tonight is my wedding. I know nothing." Then she walked away before Olivia could press further. The mystery lingered in Olivia's mind as she returned to the ballroom. Across the room, Ethan was speaking with Ryan near the entrance. The 2 men appeared deep in conversation. Then Ryan glanced toward Olivia and grinned. Ethan followed his gaze. Their eyes met from opposite sides of the room. Neither looked away immediately. A strange flutter moved through Olivia's chest, one she had not felt in a very long time. Minutes later, guests began saying their final goodbyes. Olivia stepped outside beneath the covered entrance where cool night air carried the scent of rain and pine trees. Valet attendants hurried between vehicles while guests hugged and promised to stay in touch. She wrapped her arms around herself and watched droplets fall from the roofline. "There you are." Ethan's voice came from beside her. Olivia turned. "Escaping?" "Maybe a little." "Same." For a moment, they stood together listening to the rain. Comfortable silence settled between them. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small white card. "I was going to wait until the end of the night." Olivia accepted it. It was simple, clean, just a name and a phone number. Ethan Parker. "In case you ever want to continue our support group for people who dislike meetings." Olivia smiled despite herself. "That sounds very official. I take anti-meeting advocacy seriously." She looked down at the card, then back at him. Somehow the evening that had started with loneliness now felt full of possibility. And neither of them realized that the mystery of the switched seating cards was only beginning to unfold. 3 days passed before Olivia finally looked at the card again. It had spent most of that time tucked inside a book on her nightstand, hidden beneath lesson plans and graded assignments. Not because she was uninterested. Quite the opposite. The simple white card had occupied far more of her thoughts than she wanted to admit. On Wednesday afternoon, after a particularly exhausting day of explaining fractions to 8-year-olds, she found herself staring at Ethan's phone number during her lunch break. Around her, the teacher's lounge buzzed with conversations about schedules, parent conferences, and weekend plans. Olivia barely heard any of it. Finally, before she could overthink herself out of it, she typed a message. "I survived 3 faculty meetings this week. I believe that qualifies me for support group membership." She stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before pressing send. Almost immediately, regret arrived. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he would not remember her as clearly as she remembered him. Maybe the magic had only existed because of the wedding. Her phone buzzed less than a minute later. 3 meetings? That is heroic. I think coffee is required after such an accomplishment. Olivia smiled before she realized she was smiling. Their first coffee meeting happened Saturday morning at a small independent cafe overlooking the town square. The place smelled like cinnamon, fresh pastries, and roasted coffee beans. Olivia arrived first and chose a table near the window. She checked her watch twice, then checked the door 3 more times. When Ethan finally walked in, She felt an unexpected sense of relief, as though she had been worried he might not be real outside the wedding. But he was. The same easy smile, the same calm presence, the same ability to make everything feel less complicated. "You actually came," she teased as he sat down. "I considered sending a representative. Very professional. I take coffee seriously." What was supposed to be a quick 1-hour meeting somehow became nearly 3 hours. They talked about books, travel dreams, family traditions, and the strange things people believed about adulthood when they were teenagers. Olivia learned that Ethan traveled frequently for work. Ethan learned that Olivia kept a box of handwritten notes from former students because she could never bring herself to throw them away. "You save all of them?" he asked. "Every single one. That is either incredibly sweet or dangerously sentimental. Probably both." Outside, sunlight filled the square while people moved between shops and restaurants. Inside, time seemed to move differently. Neither noticed how long they had been sitting there until a barista jokingly asked whether they planned to pay rent for the table. As they left the cafe, they walked slowly through downtown. A street musician played guitar near the fountain. Children chased pigeons across the plaza. Everything felt ordinary. Yet Olivia found herself enjoying the ordinary in a way she had not for months. Near the corner, Ethan stopped beside a bookstore. "There is something I should confess," he said. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious. I judge people by their bookstore habits." "You do not." "I absolutely do." "And what is the verdict?" Ethan pretended to think. "Still under review." Olivia laughed. The sound came. Easily now. Natural. Unforced. As they continued walking, neither noticed the black luxury SUV parked across the street. Nor did Olivia notice the driver waiting patiently behind the wheel. But she did notice something else. Every time she was with Ethan, the loneliness that had followed her since the breakup seemed a little farther away. Over the next several weeks, seeing Ethan became part of Olivia's routine in a way neither of them had planned. Sometimes it was coffee on a Saturday morning. Sometimes it was a walk through town after work. Other times it was simply exchanging messages about their day. The connection grew naturally, without either of them trying to force it into something it was not. One Thursday afternoon, Olivia was leaving school when her phone buzzed. "Emergency. I need professional advice." She smiled immediately. "That sounds serious." "It is. I accidentally volunteered to judge a children's science fair tomorrow." Olivia laughed out loud in the parking lot. "And I have no idea what I am doing. The projects are made by 9-year-olds. You will survive." That confidence is inspiring. The following afternoon, Ethan actually showed up at the school gymnasium where the science fair was being held. Olivia watched from across the room as he patiently listened to excited children explain volcano models, solar system displays, and experiments involving paper airplanes. What surprised her most was how engaged he seemed. He treated every student as though their project mattered. By the end of the event, several children were following him around asking questions. "You are unusually good at this," Olivia told him afterward. "At being interrogated by 4th graders? At making people feel important?" Ethan smiled but did not answer. The compliment seemed to make him slightly uncomfortable. A few days later, another small detail caught Olivia's attention. They were meeting for lunch at a casual restaurant downtown when a man in an expensive suit approached their table. The stranger stopped immediately when he saw Ethan. "Mr. Parker," he said. Ethan's expression changed for the briefest moment. Not dramatically, just enough for Olivia to notice. "Good to see you, Daniel," Ethan replied. The man nodded respectfully. "I will let you get back to your lunch." Then he walked away. Olivia stirred her iced tea thoughtfully. "Mr. Parker?" Ethan sighed. "I was hoping you would ignore that." "Not a chance. Old business contact." People do not usually greet old business contacts like they are reporting to headquarters. Ethan laughed. "That is a very specific observation. I am a teacher. Observation is literally part of the job." He smoothly redirected the conversation after that, but the moment stayed with her. It was not the first unusual clue she had noticed. There had been others. The luxury SUV she occasionally glimpsed nearby. The frequent business calls he always stepped away to take. The way restaurant managers seemed to recognize him even when he claimed he rarely visited those places. None of it quite fit the vague picture Ethan had painted about working in business. Later that week, Olivia arrived at a bookstore 5 minutes early for one of their usual outings. As she approached the entrance, she saw Ethan standing across the street speaking with a sharply dressed woman. The woman handed him a tablet. He reviewed something on the screen while she spoke quickly. Their interaction lasted less than a minute before Ethan noticed Olivia approaching. Instantly, the conversation ended. The woman offered a polite smile and walked away. "Friend?" Olivia asked casually. "Assistant," Ethan replied. "You have an assistant?" "Sometimes." Olivia stopped walking. "Sometimes." Ethan looked as though he immediately regretted the answer. For the first time since they met, she sensed genuine caution in him. Not dishonesty exactly. More like someone carefully guarding a door he was not ready to open. And for the first time, Olivia found herself wondering whether the man she was getting to know might be living in a very different world than the one he had shown her so far. That evening, after saying goodbye to Olivia outside the bookstore, Ethan drove farther than usual before heading home. The city lights blurred beyond the window as he sat silently in the back seat of the SUV. Across from him, a tablet displayed tomorrow's schedule, board meetings, investor calls, a charity foundation review, 3 interviews. None of it held his attention. His thoughts remained fixed on one person. Olivia. Claire, his executive assistant, glanced up from her notes. "You almost told her today." Ethan leaned back. "I know. She is starting to notice." "I know that too." Claire closed the tablet. "Then what is the plan?" Ethan stared out the window. The question was simple. The answer was not. For years, he had kept his personal life separated from his public identity. Experience had taught him to be careful. Too many conversations changed the moment people learned who he was. Too many relationships became negotiations instead of connections. Too many people fell in love with the idea of Ethan Parker rather than the man himself. 3 years earlier, he had nearly gotten engaged. Everything seemed perfect until he discovered that his future had become the centerpiece of someone else's financial ambitions. The breakup had left scars he rarely discussed. Since then, trust came slowly. Very slowly. Yet Olivia was different. She had never asked about his income, never searched for advantages, never treated him as anything other than a man she enjoyed spending time with. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself wanting something he could not control. The next Saturday, Olivia invited him to a community fundraiser organized by local teachers. The event raised money for classroom supplies and after-school programs. Nothing glamorous. Just folding tables, homemade desserts, and families supporting one another. Ethan arrived early and immediately volunteered to help carry boxes. "You know you are technically a guest," Olivia told him. "I have been informed that guests are simply volunteers who have not been assigned jobs yet." She laughed and handed him another stack of supplies. Throughout the afternoon, Ethan watched Olivia move through the crowd. Parents greeted her warmly. Former students ran up to hug her. Children proudly introduced siblings and grandparents. Everywhere she went, people smiled. It was not because she was important. It was because she cared. The realization struck him unexpectedly. Olivia had built something many wealthy people spent entire lives chasing. Genuine connection. Later, while helping clean up, Olivia pointed toward an aging brick building across the street. "One day I want to do something bigger." Ethan followed her gaze. "Bigger how?" She hesitated before answering. "A community learning center. Free tutoring. Art programs. Reading workshops. A place where every child has access to opportunities regardless of what their family can afford." Ethan listened carefully. "That sounds ambitious." "It probably is." "No," he smiled softly. "It sounds important." Olivia looked surprised by the seriousness in his voice. "Most people tell me it is unrealistic. Most people are wrong." For a moment, neither spoke. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Children laughed in the distance. Olivia felt a warmth she could not explain. Every dream she shared seemed safe with him. Yet as she looked at Ethan standing there, another question quietly returned. Who exactly was he? Because the more she learned about him, the more pieces refused to fit together. And somewhere deep inside, she sensed that a truth was waiting just beyond her reach. 2 weeks later, Olivia received an invitation she almost declined. The envelope arrived at school on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between curriculum updates and parent forms. It was an invitation to the grand opening of a new educational initiative being launched in Boston. Several local teachers had been selected to attend because of their community involvement. Under normal circumstances, she would have politely declined. The event sounded formal, corporate, and far outside her comfort zone. But when she mentioned it to Ethan during a phone call that evening, His reaction surprised her. "You should go. Trust me, I am not the type of person who belongs at events like that. Maybe that is exactly why you belong there. That sounds suspiciously inspirational. I am working on my motivational speaking skills." His encouragement lingered with her. By Saturday morning, she found herself standing inside one of the most impressive buildings she had ever entered. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked the city skyline. Hundreds of guests filled the enormous event hall. Business leaders, educators, journalists, and community organizers moved through the crowd carrying name badges and coffee cups. Olivia immediately felt underdressed despite spending an hour choosing her outfit. She checked her phone. No messages from Ethan. Strange. Usually he would have texted by now. A voice over the speakers welcomed everyone to the event. Guests gradually took their seats facing a large stage where a giant screen displayed images of schools, libraries, and community programs. Olivia settled into a chair near the middle of the room. The program began with several speakers discussing educational access and community investment. She listened politely, though her attention drifted. Then the announcer stepped back onto the stage. "And now, please welcome the founder of Parker Ventures and the Parker Education Foundation." The room erupted into applause. Olivia looked toward the stage. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Then the giant screen behind the podium illuminated with a photograph. Ethan Parker. Her breath caught instantly. No. Her eyes snapped back toward the stage. A man stepped into the spotlight. Ethan. The same Ethan who joked about faculty meetings. The same Ethan who spent Saturday mornings in coffee shops. The same Ethan who helped carry folding tables at community fundraisers. Except now he wore a tailored suit as hundreds of people stood to applaud him. Olivia froze. The room blurred around her. She heard the announcer continue speaking. One of the youngest technology entrepreneurs in the country. Founder and chief executive officer of Parker Ventures. Philanthropist and investor. Recognized by Forbes as one of America's most influential business leaders. Every sentence felt impossible. Ethan stepped behind the podium. Calm. Confident. Completely at home in a world she had never seen. Reporters raised cameras. Executives greeted him with admiration. Several people standing nearby whispered his name. Olivia stared at the stage in disbelief. Suddenly, every strange detail from the past 2 months rearranged itself into a clear picture. The assistant, the SUV, the business calls, the people who recognized him, the respect he seemed to command without explanation. He had never lied to her. Not exactly, but he had never told her the truth either. As Ethan began speaking about expanding educational opportunities for children, his gaze moved across the audience. Then he saw her. For a brief second, his prepared remarks seemed to disappear. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. Olivia saw immediate recognition in his expression, then concern, because he knew. He knew she had just discovered who he really was. And for the first time since they met, neither of them knew what would happen next. Olivia remained seated until the applause faded and the presentation ended. Around her, guests stood, exchanged business cards, and moved toward networking areas set up throughout the hall. She barely noticed any of it. Her mind replayed dozens of moments from the past 2 months, each one now carrying a different meaning. Ethan had never claimed to be an ordinary businessman. He had simply allowed her to believe it. Somehow that distinction did not make her feel any better. Her phone vibrated. One message. Ethan, please do not leave. Let me explain. Olivia stared at the screen for several seconds before locking her phone and slipping it into her purse. She needed air. Outside, the afternoon breeze carried the scent of rain from the harbor. Boston traffic moved steadily beyond the plaza while conference guests filtered in and out of the building. Olivia walked toward a quiet corner near a fountain and sat down. For the first time since meeting Ethan, she felt distance between them. Not physical distance. Something deeper. The distance created when one person knows the entire truth and the other does not. I was hoping you would answer my message. Ethan's voice came gently from behind her. Olivia looked up. He had removed his conference badge and loosened his tie. For a moment, he looked more familiar. More like the man from the coffee shop. You are famous, she said quietly. Ethan sighed. That is not exactly how I would describe it. Founder. Chief Executive Officer. National magazines. Foundations. Investments. She shook her head. You left out a few details. He sat beside her, leaving respectful space between them. I know. Why? The question carried more emotion than she intended. Because every time someone learns who I am, something changes. Olivia looked away. You did not give me the chance to decide that for myself. Ethan did not immediately respond. The silence itself felt like an answer. I never meant to hurt you, he finally said. Then what did you mean to do? He stared at the fountain for several seconds. I wanted one relationship in my life that felt normal. Olivia laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. Normal? Yes. Ethan, nothing about this is normal. He nodded. That is fair. For the first time since sitting down, she saw genuine regret in his expression. Not regret for being successful. Regret for keeping part of himself hidden. Do you know what bothers me most? She asked. Probably. Try me. Ethan looked directly at her. It is not the money. It is not the company. It is that I did not trust you enough to tell you. Olivia felt her chest tighten. Because he was right. If she was completely honest with herself, the wealth was not what upset her. It was the realization that while she had shared her dreams, fears, and disappointments, Ethan had carefully protected the most important part of his life. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Rachel. Call me immediately. I just learned something about those seating cards. Olivia stared at the message in confusion. Before she could respond, another notification appeared. A social media alert. Someone had posted photographs from the event. The first image showed Ethan on stage. The second showed Ethan standing beside Olivia during a previous community fundraiser. Comments were already appearing beneath the pictures. Speculation. Assumptions. Questions about who she was. Olivia felt her stomach sink. Suddenly, the private world they had built together no longer felt private at all. The drive home felt longer than usual. Olivia barely listened to the radio as Rachel's words echoed through her mind. The moment she arrived at her apartment, her phone rang. Rachel, tell me everything, Olivia said before her cousin could even say hello. Rachel groaned dramatically. I knew you would start with that. Rachel, okay. Remember how I told you I did not know anything about the seating cards? Yes. That was technically true. Olivia narrowed her eyes, even though Rachel could not see her. Technically, I did not know at the time. But Ryan confessed today. Olivia sat upright. Confessed what? He switched the cards. Silence filled the line. What? Olivia finally whispered. Apparently, he noticed you standing alone before the ceremony. He also noticed Ethan sitting by himself during the rehearsal dinner the night before. Ryan thought you were both too stubborn to introduce yourselves to anyone. Olivia laughed despite herself. You are telling me this entire thing happened because your husband was playing matchmaker? According to him, yes. That is ridiculous. I know. That is completely ridiculous. Rachel's laughter grew louder. And yet here we are. After the call ended, Olivia sat quietly staring at the city lights outside her window. The mystery that had lingered since the wedding suddenly seemed less mysterious and more strangely beautiful. One small decision. One switch card. One empty chair. Somehow it had changed everything. Yet the discovery did not erase the hurt she felt about Ethan's secret. The next few days were difficult. Messages from Ethan continued to arrive. Some were simple, asking how her day had gone, asking whether she had survived another faculty meeting. Others were more honest. He apologized for keeping part of his life hidden. He admitted he should have trusted her sooner. Olivia read every message. She answered none of them. At school, life continued as usual. Lessons, parent meetings, homework. But several teachers had already seen the photographs circulating online. Questions followed. You know Ethan Parker? The Ethan Parker? Why did you never mention that? Every conversation made Olivia feel more uncomfortable. It reinforced exactly why she had pulled away. Suddenly, she was no longer simply Olivia Bennett, third-grade teacher. She was becoming associated with someone else's reputation. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, she stopped by the community center where she volunteered twice a month. The building was quiet except for a handful of children working on art projects. As she walked through the hallway, she noticed a new framed blueprint hanging on the wall. Below it was a small plaque. Future Community Learning Center. Olivia froze. The design looked remarkably similar to the dream she had once described to Ethan. Reading rooms, art spaces, tutoring areas, a community garden. Every detail felt familiar. Beautiful, isn't it? Asked the center director as she approached. Who designed this? Olivia asked. The concept came from an anonymous donor. He wants to fund the entire project. Olivia's heart skipped. She already knew the answer before hearing it. Anonymous. The director smiled knowingly. Very anonymous. Olivia looked at the blueprint again. Suddenly she understood something important. Ethan had never tried to impress her with money. He had listened when she spoke. He had remembered every detail of a dream she thought nobody else took seriously. And somewhere between the wedding and now, he had quietly started helping make it possible. For the first time since Boston, the wall she had built around her heart began to crack. 2 days later, Olivia finally answered one of Ethan's messages. She did not spend an hour crafting the perfect response. She did not write a long speech. She simply typed 4 words. "Can we talk tomorrow?" The reply arrived almost immediately. Anytime. Anywhere. The next afternoon, they met at the small lakeside park where they had once walked after coffee. Autumn had begun painting the trees with shades of gold and amber. The water reflected the afternoon sunlight, and a cool breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves across the shoreline. Ethan was already there when Olivia arrived. For the first time since she had known him, he looked nervous. Not the kind of nervousness that came from public speaking or business negotiations. Something far more personal. He stood when he saw her approach. Neither spoke right away. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "I saw the blueprint." Ethan nodded slowly. "I figured you might. You were going to fund the learning center. I was hoping to help." Without telling me, a faint smile crossed his face. "You seem to dislike surprises less than secrets." Olivia tried not to laugh. She failed. The tension between them softened slightly. They began walking along the shoreline. For several minutes they talked honestly in a way neither had before. Ethan explained how difficult it had become to trust people after years of public attention and failed relationships. He admitted that meeting Olivia at the wedding had felt different from the beginning. There had been no expectations, no hidden agendas, just conversation, just connection. "I kept telling myself I would explain everything," he said. "Then every time I saw you, I was afraid that once you knew, things would change." Olivia stared at the water. "Things did change." Ethan lowered his eyes. "I know, but not for the reason you thought." He looked at her. "What do you mean?" Olivia stopped walking. "I never cared about the company. I never cared about the money. I cared that you decided for me. You never gave me the chance to know all of you." Ethan absorbed the words quietly. "You deserved better than that." "Yes, I did." The honesty hung between them. Yet for the first time in weeks, it felt like they were moving toward each other rather than apart. As they continued walking, Ethan told her about the Learning Center project. Not as a donor, not as a billionaire entrepreneur, as someone who genuinely believed in her dream. He had already assembled architects, educators, and community leaders willing to help bring the project to life. But one thing was still missing. "What?" Olivia asked. Ethan smiled. "The person who dreamed it first." Tears unexpectedly filled her eyes. Not because of the money, not because of the scale of the project, because someone had listened, truly listened. Every detail she had shared months earlier had mattered. By the time the sun began setting over the lake, the distance between them felt smaller than it had in weeks. Before leaving, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a folder. Inside were preliminary sketches for the center. On the front page, beneath the project title, was a handwritten note. "Every child deserves someone who believes in them. You taught me that." Olivia looked up at him. Neither needed to say what they were both beginning to feel. Sometimes forgiveness did not arrive all at once. Sometimes it arrived one honest conversation at a time. And as they stood together watching the sun disappear beyond the water, both knew this was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. 1 year later, sunlight poured through the enormous windows of the new community learning center as laughter echoed through every hallway. Children carried books between reading rooms. Volunteers prepared afternoon tutoring sessions. Paintings created by local students decorated the walls. What had once been a dream spoken quietly beside folding tables and community fundraisers now stood proudly at the center of town. Olivia walked through the building with the same sense of disbelief she felt every morning. The center was real, not because of one person's generosity, because dozens of people had come together around a shared vision. Teachers, parents, donors, volunteers, and community leaders had all played a role. Yet she knew none of it would have happened without Ethan believing in her when almost nobody else had. "Miss Bennett," a young voice called from down the hallway. One of the students ran over carrying a stack of books nearly as tall as he was. Olivia laughed and helped him steady the pile before sending him toward the reading room. As she continued walking, she noticed a familiar figure standing near the entrance. Ethan. Even after a year, seeing him still brought an immediate smile to her face. Things between them had changed slowly after their conversation by the lake. Trust had been rebuilt one honest conversation at a time. There had been no grand shortcuts, no magical solutions, just consistency, patience, and truth. Somehow, that made what they shared feel even stronger. "You are late," Olivia teased as she approached. "I am exactly 43 seconds late. So you admit you are late." "I admit nothing." She laughed and shook her head. "Why are you here this early?" "I wanted to make sure everything was ready." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" A mysterious smile crossed his face. "You will see." Before she could question him further, Rachel and Ryan appeared from another hallway. Then several teachers. Then volunteers. Then parents from the community. Olivia looked around in confusion. "What is happening?" Rachel grinned. "You really have not figured it out?" "Figured out what?" Ryan stepped forward, holding a small frame wrapped in protective paper. "I think this belongs to you." Carefully, he handed it to her. Olivia removed the wrapping. The moment she saw what was inside, her breath caught. It was the original seating card from the wedding, slightly worn, preserved behind glass. Table 12. The same card that had placed her beside Ethan on the most unexpected night of her life. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "You kept it?" she whispered. Ethan smiled. "I may have asked Ryan for a favor." "A favor?" Ryan laughed. "Trust me, tracking down that card took months." Everyone around them chuckled. Olivia stared at the framed card, overwhelmed by the memories attached to such a simple piece of paper. One wrong seat. One unexpected conversation. One decision that changed everything. Ethan gently took the frame from her hands and set it on a nearby table. Then he reached into his pocket and removed a small box. The room instantly fell silent. Olivia's eyes widened. Ethan stepped closer. "A year ago, I sat beside a woman who thought she was alone." His voice softened. "She had no idea she was about to become the most important person in my life." Emotion tightened in Olivia's throat. Every good thing that happened after that began with one unexpected moment. One empty chair. One conversation. One chance I almost missed. He opened the box. Inside rested a simple, elegant ring. "Olivia Bennett, will you spend the rest of your life with me?" Tears slipped down her cheeks as laughter and applause erupted around them. She nodded before she could even find her voice. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes." The room exploded with celebration. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger as friends and family cheered. And above the crowd, displayed beside photographs of the Learning Center's journey, the framed seating card remained exactly where everyone could see it. A reminder that sometimes the smallest changes create the biggest miracles, and sometimes the person sitting in the empty seat beside you becomes the person who walks beside you for the rest of your life.